Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Director Kraninger, thank you and your team for all the work you're doing to protect America's consumers. I appreciate having you on the job. I want to say a special thanks to Paul Watkins and the attention he's given not just to fintech, but to privacy. So in your proposed rulemaking on privacy, I guess I'm looking at the scope of privacy. You think about the key things for consumer protections. Their data and the use of it has really defined a lot of this age, whether it's data breaches or the way that any number of companies have monetized the access to data that consumers have. So what's the scope that you're looking at, and how do you use that to protect consumers?
Absolutely, Congressman. I believe you're referencing the Section 1033 policy discussion that we're having now about consumer authorized access to their own financial data. It is a complex issue. Certainly the Bureau issued principles, and privacy and data security are part of that consideration for how best to enable that data access for consumers. We had a symposium a few months ago. We just issued the report out from that symposium and announced that we would engage in an advance notice of proposed rulemaking. I think it is a complex area. There are a lot of issues to consider that we're looking forward to getting more data on. But I would say that there has been progress made in moving away from screen scraping as the means by which many aggregators would get consumers' financial data using their bank credentials and having that be provided by the consumer. That's something that is not a best practice, certainly. And so moving in the direction of APIs so that there's an automated data transfer that can happen and that there is more control on both sides. But that's something that we are really looking to have a more extensive dialogue around, and that's what we announced last week.
Well, when you think about the consumer protections with respect to data, the work you're doing there is critically important in large measure because Congress has failed to act. We don't have a comprehensive data protection law for all consumer activities in the United States. We have a somewhat outdated Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act that I think you proposed to update, but there are lots of data houses that make use of this that aren't covered by Gramm-Leach-Bliley. So do you feel like you have the authority or scope to do everything that you would need to protect consumer data?
So, Congressman, you're raising an interesting issue here with respect to not just 1033, but more globally. We do have, I think, a number of issues around privacy and data security with standards in California and Europe and what happens in the US. And there are many parts of this that are outside the CFPB's purview. So specifically, the safeguards in the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act are outside the authority of the CFPB generally. So that just to make you aware, I am actually looking at privacy and data security broadly and may have some requests of Congress or some suggestions around that. So I'm looking at that internally, particularly as it comes to credit reporting, because that's where we have at least a little more of an engagement and a responsibility there, particularly as it comes to our supervisory work. But I'll certainly get back to you on that and others. I know it's of great interest. But with Section 1033, we do have the ability to take this into account as we think about how best to move forward in that.
Thank you very much for your attention to it. There's really no excuse for Congress's failure to provide this safeguard for all America's consumers. And I hope that I can collaborate broadly for a good bipartisan solution on privacy, not just with respect to government, warrantless surveillance and things like that, but consumer financial data. Our seniors are especially vulnerable, and I appreciate the work you're doing to safeguard our seniors. And I think the last thing I'd say is, as you have conversation with the members of SSOC, with our Treasury and everything else, most of America has their assets in US dollars. It is the store of value. It is the means of exchange. And this idea that we can, in an unlimited way, just continue to print money and not damage the value of all the other dollars is foolish. We've printed an awful lot of money. We haven't truly borrowed it because there's not a real lender. And, I just urge you to weigh in where you can on the importance of protecting the U.S. dollar as a store of value and means of exchange. And for that purpose, my colleagues and I recently formed the Sound Money Caucus. Thanks again for what you do to protect America's consumers.